So how do you make sure every single vote in an election is valid? I'm not talking about a small town, but an entire state with a population bigger than most countries. Well, to figure that out, we're going to dive into the absolutely massive logistical exercise that just wrapped up in the Indian state of Bihar, where officials pulled off an unprecedented cleanup of their voter rolls.
Just take a look at this number, 7.42 crore. That's 74.2 million people. Now that's not a population count, nope. It's the final verified number of eligible voters on Bihar's new electoral roll. It's just a staggering figure, and it's the result of a truly monumental effort.
But the big question is, how did they even get to this exact number? Who was added? Who was removed? And what does it really take to clean up a list that's been growing and changing for decades? That's the story we're going to unpack today.
Okay, so to understand how they arrived at that final number, you first have to understand why this whole cleanup was so incredibly critical. See, this wasn't just some routine update. This was a fundamental review of the voter list, the first of its kind in over 2 decades.
Think about that for a second. 22 years. A whole generation of people has become eligible to vote since the last time a review this comprehensive was done. That is a long time for errors, for duplicates, and for just plain old outdated information to pile up.
And this just perfectly illustrates the challenge they were facing. This new special remote review was launched specifically to bridge that 22-year gap. The special part refers to its sheer scale after all this time. And the remote part, well, that signifies they use centralized digital tools to flag potential problems before sending teams out for on-the-ground verification. It was a whole strategy to make sure the list was as accurate as humanly possible for the next big election.
You know, the entire operation was guided by this really simple but incredibly powerful principle, and it comes right from Article 326 of India's Constitution. It is the absolute bedrock of a fair election. Every legitimate voter gets a voice, and no illegitimate votes get cast. That was the mission.
So with that mission front and center, how did the numbers actually shake out? Let's get into the data and see exactly how this whole cleanup operation unfolded. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Look at the fluctuation here. They started back in June with nearly 7.9 crore voters. But by August 1st, after that initial review, the draft list had dropped all the way to just over 7.2 crore. That means a massive 65 lakh names, that's 6.5 million names, were initially flagged for removal for things like duplication, people moving away, or, well, death. But the process didn't stop there.
So the really crucial parts is what happened between that draft list and the final one. And this table breaks it right down. After all the claims and objections were heard, over 21.5 lakh new valid voters were added to the roll. And at the same time, another 3.66 lakh names were confirmed for removal. So it's this two-way street, this process of adding and subtracting, that got them to the final verified number.
But here's the thing. These numbers, they didn't just change by themselves. This wasn't some algorithm just sorting a spreadsheet in a server room. No way. This was powered by a literal army of people on the ground coordinating across the entire state.
This whole human effort was kind of structured like a pyramid. Right at the very top, you had 38 district election officers. Each one was basically the commander of the entire mission for their whole region.
And right below them, you had the front lines. We're talking about nearly 100,000 booth-level officers. These are the people who were actually going door to door, verifying the details and figuring out the facts on the ground.
And to keep the whole process totally transparent, they were observed by 160,000 booth-level agents. These agents were actually appointed by the political parties themselves to act as watchdogs for the whole process.
And this slide just pulls the entire human machine into focus. You've got the officers we just mentioned, plus 243 electoral registration officers and almost 3,000 assistants managing all the data. You throw in lakhs of volunteers and the active cooperation of 12 major political parties, and you are looking at a collaborative effort on a scale that is almost impossible to wrap your head around.
So after all that work, what does it all really mean? Let's bring it back to that final result and talk about why this is so important for democracy.
And this part is absolutely crucial. The final verified list wasn't kept under lock and key. Nope. Both physical and digital copies were shared with all the major political parties. That kind of transparency is how you build trust in the electoral process before a single vote is even cast.
And so here we are, back to our number, 7.42 crore. But it's not just a large figure anymore, is it?
Now it represents the end results of this incredible effort. Every single digit in that number is now backed by verification, by paperwork, and by countless hours of human labor.
Ultimately, this is the big takeaway. An election is only as fair as the list of people who are eligible to vote in it. Period. By taking on this massive cleanup, Bihar's Election Commission has reinforced the very foundation of its democratic process. You know, it leaves you with a final thought. We tend to focus on the drama of campaign trails and election nights, but maybe the real, unsung work of democracy lies in these meticulous, painstaking efforts just like this one. So what does it truly take to make millions of voices heard, accurately and fairly? Well, it takes an army.